Welcome to the Masters of Travel podcast. Today, I have with me Brittany Tromenhauser. She is the CEO and founder of Avery Travel Group, and she's been an advisor for the past 8 years, but started focusing more on groups and incentive travel about 5 years ago. And so we're going to dive into how that happened and what that journey looked like. But her passion at this point in her career is groups and working with social, wellness, corporate, MICE groups, all the above. And I love this conversation because where we came into contact was me just literally putting out on Instagram. Like somebody wanted to know, I asked the question, hey, what type of podcast are you guys interested in? What kind of guests can we have that would be beneficial to you and what you're curious about? And, somebody submitted a question and they were like, I want to know more about incentive travel. And I was like, well, you're not going to learn that from me, but does anybody else out there know anything about incentive travel? And then you answered and I was like, great, you are going to be a podcast guest. And so that brought us here, which is really, really great because this whole industry, there's so many different ways to be a travel advisor. There's so many different ways to find success. And there's so many different pivots. Like you start one place and then you end up another. And that's kind of like the beauty of it because you don't even know what you don't know when you start anyway. And you can just find things that like light you up, that you find out that you're good at, that you find out is pretty profitable, all the above. And for you, that has been incentive travel. And because it is something that I have very limited knowledge of, I think this conversation is going to be fun because while you're going to share with everybody else, you're also going to share with me. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Yay. Okay. So let's just start at the beginning. So kind of people get an understanding of, hey, how'd you get into this industry? And what was that kind of like journey for you? Where'd you start, where you're at now, and what has happened like in that middle, kind of like time frame?
Okay. So a million years ago, it feels like I was a flight attendant. That's how I got started in the travel industry. And I was young and single at the time. I met my now husband and I was actually working with another flight attendant who was a travel advisor. And she's like, let me plan your honeymoon. And I'm like, I don't need you to do that. Like our travel advisor is still a thing,
Same. Yep. Same question I asked at the beginning.
Like really just let me plan it. And I was like, okay. So she planned my honeymoon to St. Lucia. It was amazing. We got back. Within that year, I got pregnant with my daughter and she called me out of nowhere and she was like, do you want to become a travel agent so that you don't have to fly anymore and can stay home with your kid? And I was like, sure, like, let's give it a shot. And I owe everything to her for just giving me a start that in an industry I never even gave any consideration to. So started out just with a newborn and as a travel agent, I, learned a lot. I stayed with her for a couple of years, went to a new host. And I had one specific client that was a friend of mine. And his friend reached out to me and said, I had planned a trip for them in the past. Sorry. So like a friend group trip. And when they got home from that trip, he was like, hey, I'm the CEO of this company and I'm really looking to take my reps on a trip to Mexico. Is that something you can help me with? It'll be about 50 people. And I was like, oh
yeah, the answer is yes. And then I'll figure out how do I do that? Right.
Pretty much. And I mean, I feel like as an adult, there's been so many things of that, right? Like we fall into those kind of patterns all the time. Like maybe know how to do that, but I'm going to figure it out and do it well. And that is literally how my incentive group process started. And that was almost 6 years ago. And then since then, like I planned a trip for his company twice a year. And then it's just been referrals from him and other people that have found me. So now even though I'm like, I still consider myself a travel advisor, I've really stepped into more of like the meeting planner or corporate incentive travel role because I would say 80% of the trips that I'm planning are for corporate incentive.
Yeah, I love that because it really did come not from you like seeking it out, right? Yeah. Like this is a niche I want to kind of go down and do it. And I'm just going to figure it out. But really just somebody asking you a question, you saying yes. Yeah. And here is the thing that sometimes we say yes. And then we do the thing and we're like, absolutely not, never again. Right.
Yes.
Because that's me. I think you mentioned this, but that's me with like destination weddings. Like I said, of course I had a destination wedding. I can help you plan your destination wedding. And I did. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like never again. I don't want to see a bride with like her friends who have never all the things. Right. So sometimes that's the outcome.
It's funny that you say that because after I did 2 incentive trips, I had another client. She was like, we're getting married. We want to go to Mexico. Can you do my destination wedding? Same mentality. I was like, sure. And I did it. And I was like, this is a whole different ball game than incentive travel or anything I've ever done before. Yeah. And so I loved her so much as a bride, But like, it's just, the beauty of incentive travel is you have all these people, but there's one person paying for everything. Whereas with a
That's
destination
nice.
wedding, it's all these different, it's just like so many more moving pieces. So, and then, yeah, I was glad to have that experience, but I knew this is not what I want to do. This is not the niche I want to be,
Right.
get into. And so that's why I was, there's a
Yeah.
million other people. We can always refer those out.
There's so many people who love it, right? Like,
Yes, yes.
and bless it all. Like, I will definitely refer anybody who comes
Yes.
my way to you because you're going to, I mean,
Yeah,
I feel that way about so many different types of travel that are just like not
sure.
my thing. I can't
Yeah.
plan a cruise to save my life because I don't know. There's so much information that's over my head. Like, you
Yeah.
want to go to Disney, like, okay,
Gosh, yeah.
I couldn't help you there either. But
Yeah.
there's people
That's
who love all the things, and that's the beauty of our industry as well, is like there's a place for everyone, there's a
yeah.
type of travel for everyone, and we get to kind of try it and be like, no, not for me, because we
Yeah.
don't have to do it all. So that's really lovely. So those beginning years and kind of like at that start of this journey
Yeah.
for you, was there kind of in comparing, leisure travel and a couple going on a honeymoon or an anniversary trip, and then moving over to this type of travel and kind of adding to it as you go, were there any kind of like challenges or different things that were like, oh wow, this is different and I have to learn how to work this way or do things this way that is different than how you do it as like a leisure travel advisor?
I feel like I will say one of the biggest challenges was just not knowing what I didn't know. So, I had to figure things out from square one. And at the time I was with a host agency that didn't really specialize in groups of any kind. So that was one of the reasons that I left too, because I just felt like I needed to find somebody else that would be better suited for what I was looking for and the mentorship that I needed. And I will say most of the mentors that I have had along the way in the last couple of years have come from actual meeting planners, not travel advisors. Because one of the things with incentive travel is, it is a big group of people. They're going to one destination, but they're coming from all different parts of the states. Usually, I also have a lot of clients that are in Canada, so it's kind of a different ball game there too. But, it's not just here's your vacation and enjoy. It's, we set up the transfers for everyone and then the welcome dinner and then the meeting space that they have on day 1, 2, or 3 and any breakout rooms that they need. So it's really just so much more involved than just being here's your all-inclusive vacation resort.
Right.
Yeah. So that has actually been what I've enjoyed the most about it, which was unexpected. And I will never forget a few years ago, I was at a resort in Cancun and I was with my family and we get in the elevator and this woman comes in and she's got this clipboard and she just looks so stressed. And we walk out and I said to my husband, I bet she's a meeting planner. And he's like, how do you know? I'm like, I just have a feeling. And then sure enough, I see her that night at this big reception for 200 plus people. And I was like, that is what I want to do. And to see my journey, just like have a vision in my mind, figure out what I want to do. And then I actually just traveled with my first group. I've been doing this for years, but I finally decided to travel and like to be the woman with the clipboard who was stressed out. I was like, look at this.
That is so interesting. So this might be a naive question, but I just want to make sure that I understand the difference. So when somebody's a meeting planner, are they just the person that's like on the ground doing the logistics? Is that kind of like what their role is?
I think there's a lot of there's actual meeting incentive houses. So they have kind of the same thing where you'll have a salesperson who works in the office that works with the client directly to figure out what they want and then contact the resort. There's this platform called Cvent, which I did not know about this until a couple of years ago, but that's been a software that's been super beneficial in my business because you put it in there and then all these resorts will be like, oh, wait, we want you to pick us, so I don't have to up to each individual resort.
They're already saying like, hi, we can do this. Here's what we have to offer.
I put it in and say, this is, the dates that we need, the amount of attendees, the amount of rooms, the meeting space we need. And then they're like, okay, well, here we go. But that's been nice. But you kind of have a salesperson that you're working with. And then once you get the sales contract signed, you move on to the group coordinator at the specific resort you're working with. So that's who I work with, pretty much from the signing of the contract to travel. And then I now go and travel the day before the group arrives, go through all the meeting space, the dinners, make sure all the rooms are correct, just make sure everything is all in a row. And now I don't even know what your question was.
Oh, I don't know either, but this is all interesting. It's fascinating. I was kind of just trying to understand the difference of like these different roles that kind of like maybe your role kind of encompasses a lot of them when you get kind of more into it. So like you do the travel. So you're getting all this, commission and you're earning money that way. Yeah. But then you're also, when you are traveling and you're on site, you're doing that meeting planner role as well, which could be something separate, but like if you're doing both, then you get probably, I'm thinking, just more like control of the entire experience, because I'm looking, it's kind of like event planning in that way, right? Like if you were kind of comparing it to like a wedding coordinator person or whatever, like they can have the vision and like they're planning all the things or whatever, but then they show up on the day and they're like, no, you go here, you do this needs this is going crazy, and I need to put out this fire, and now I need to go, and they're doing all the things for the actual event to take place versus just like the vision and the, you know, the florals and like all of that type of thing. So that's just, I was just trying to understand kind of like the different players, I guess, in the game.
I think it is exactly what you're saying. And like the people that I know that are meeting planners that work for an incentive house, they're not doing the sell stuff. They're not doing the contract negotiations and working with the different hotels to get what the client is looking for. They're the ones who are working with the coordinator on site at the property and then traveling with the group when they go. So I did it was probably 2 years ago. I was like, should I just quit what I'm doing now and go work for an incentive house? And I, at the end of the day, was like, you know what? I like my flexibility. I like being able to do what I want to do. And I mean, not to toot my own horn, but like I've grown up to realize like, you just got to be proud of yourself in some points and not be ashamed to say that. But like, I got to where I am without having a big corporation backing me, you know? So I decided to just like kind of like stay my own path and see what happens. And so far it's been great. So I'm completely independent now. And that was a good choice for me too, because I just wasn't getting exactly what I needed from a host. So now I'm really kind of focusing on the relationships that I have with different BDMs and wholesalers and certain properties. I should also say I have only done incentive groups to Mexico. So all of them have been incentive, all-inclusive trips. I attend this conference. It's called IMEX Americas. It's all about meeting and incentive travel for groups. And so I have different contacts all over the world, really, like speed dating, you know, just like a GTM or something.
Right. Yeah.
Different. But I have not yet had a client that has wanted to do
that. Right.
Yes. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? If I'm doing this for years to come, that's bound to happen eventually. Yes. So I'm just keeping all these people in my back pocket until I need them.
100%.
But I feel like everyone knows in this industry, especially I feel like the longer you've been in it, the more you realize it more, like the relationships are the most important thing. And so now that I'm on my own, I really have to focus on like, well, no one else is going to help me meet anybody. So like, I got to get out there.
This is like the huge thing that you're going to be like, how am I going to grow? How am I going to make sure that I'm the best at what I do? Is like, I got to go out there and make it happen, which I love. But I also love that you got to the point where you're like, hey, being independent makes sense because I know what I'm doing. I know what I need, like the areas where I need to grow. And it's not necessarily if there's no host out there that can help you do that. I have no idea, but paying a host just to have a host is
for sure.
Like I, at this point in my career, feel the same, but I just know what I'm doing. I know my business model. I know how to be profitable. I know like the support that I need is different at this age. And it's a business decision at the end of the day, you know, so
nothing personal.
Nothing personal at all. And it could be different, but I respect that. Okay. This is all super, super fascinating. I'm kind of curious about this idea of, I don't know, passion, I guess you would say, because I think a lot of us in this industry specifically, like we traveled or, you know, we have this passion for like what we do. Right. And so like, you know, I traveled for years doing this other thing and I'm like, how can I take this passion and make it a career? And how do I get paid? And how do I help people doing something I love, but whatever. So tell me about like where your passion is in this part of the industry, like working with groups, doing this type of thing, because I feel like it's probably a bit different than like a couple celebrating their anniversary. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, it is very different. And I will say both can be rewarding in their own right. You know, like, because I still do some FIT trips too. I actually got a great piece of advice just a few months ago from somebody, because I was like, my goal is to transition completely to groups. I don't want to do FIT anymore. And she was like, I think you should focus on groups, but don't ever give up FIT. And I'm like, but why? And she's like, because what happened to every single meeting planner you know when COVID hit? You know, like they had no job for years.
Yeah.
Like you never know what's going to happen. So I thought that was good. And I may not focus on FIT anymore, but I still book a few, you know, there's still clients that I have had for years. And that kind of stuff is rewarding when they're like, this trip was amazing. Thank you so much. You know, I get that. But I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It might just be a personality thing or just preference in general, because the joy that I felt when I traveled with that. It was in March. I went with them to Puerto Vallarta, and I was just like, I just went to bed that night thinking like, pinch me. I cannot believe this is my life. Like I
Mm.
just, but I don't know how, I don't know why. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, it doesn't necessarily have, I think it probably
Yeah.
comes more from like what motivates you, right?
I think I also just feel so fulfilled in that. Like
Yeah.
it is a lot more work to do groups than FIT, especially when you're dealing, with so many people. Um, but well, the payoff at the end is greater because
I
it's a
was going
larger.
to say dollar for dollar is
Yeah, it is. It is a
so
lot
I
work.
took 50 of my trips
Yeah,
and all the work that goes into like those 50 trips versus your one trip with 50 people
yeah,
or what have,
yeah.
whatever, however
That
the
was
math works.
that was a big deciding factor for me too when I really started to focus on incentive travel because I had done a few trips and I knew I enjoyed it, but I was still doing the majority of FIT. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting these commission checks for FIT, like more frequently, but when they add them all up, it's not as much as these incentive groups are. And so I went through all the numbers and I'm like, if I could do, X amount of groups per
Mm-hmm.
year, then I could just be set. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's really what I focus on now. And at the end of the day, I have a passion for it and I find so much joy in it, but I'm running a business and the money is important. So I have to pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to all of those things. But I I just feel like even if there's no explanation for it, like I just knew that I found fulfillment in it and seeing all the work that I put into it, like, and it's a long game. That's the other thing that I think is important to note. For example, I'm working with a new corporate client right now that we just signed the contract Friday of last week. And they contacted me 3 months ago. Like we have
Mm.
just been in because back and forth with different hotels. And then they give when you do a group, you get certain concessions if you get X
Mm-hmm.
amount of rooms booked. And my client who is in sales, he was like, well, we want more concessions. So ask for this and ask for that. And so the negotiations just back and forth took forever. And finally, when I signed the contract, I remember telling my friend, like, remember how I was working on this? Like it feels like I can't believe this is finally done. But it's like it's over 250 people and the biggest group
Yeah.
that I've had to
Wow.
date yet. So I'm just like, it's worth it in the
Yeah.
end, but it is a long game. Whereas,
Yeah.
I get a request for a couple's anniversary to Cancun and you have that booked in 12 hours.
Right, right. A
So
different type of work. But
it
yeah,
is a
like I
different,
said, I'm super interested in the like if you can be fulfilled, if you can find your motivation, if you feel like, hey, this is what lights me up.
yeah,
And also you can see like, yeah, it's hard work in different ways. And
yeah,
it's like maybe more concentrated, right? Like you have to do a lot of work for these handful of clients
yeah,
that support your entire business versus like I'm doing whatever, like 130 FIT trips to kind of keep,
yeah.
my business going. But that's
Yeah.
a lot of balls that I'm always juggling with so many different people
That
and so
was
many different clients.
that's what is really hard, right? Like there's so many things. And of course, like we have our automated systems and we keep track of everything, but like you're still juggling a whole lot of different balls at the same
Yeah.
time. And for me, that was a big motivation once I finally figured out like I like doing this, I can do this and make it successful because I actually feel like I work less now than
Yeah.
I did when I was doing
Yeah.
FIT. Like there
And the
may be
more you
days,
do it, the more that's probably going to be true because you're
yeah,
going to have better systems. So you're going to know more about like
yeah.
how to
Well,
get to this
and
destination
even like
easier.
travel documents. Think about
Yeah.
I don't have an assistant and I don't know if I should or not, but I'm just saying I don't have one. So all that if I'm doing travel documents for 130 FIT people that are traveling each year, that is a lot that's time consuming. And then with my incentive groups, I only have one contact that I use for each group. So I send them one spreadsheet that has everyone's information for checkout, all the information and I'm not having to communicate with those 250 people. I just
Right.
communicate with one. And
Right.
I at
Another
first
difference
I
from destination weddings, FYI. And
yes,
listening.
exactly. That was the most work I had ever done.
Ever.
Ever.
Like, oh my gosh, will these people stop emailing me about,
Yes,
like every single
every little
thing?
thing. Yeah. Yeah, man, yeah, never
Oh
again. But
goodness.
God bless those of you who do it
Yes.
because I
God
do think it
bless.
takes a certain type of person for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
But it's just because of that, like having to deal with less clients. I should also say in the beginning, I did deal with everybody, but it was like I would send them travel documents and I would never hear from them again,
Mhm.
and they would, if they had a question, they would go to the person they know who's my contact. So it
Gotcha.
felt like it's working smarter, not harder to
Yeah.
just communicate with one person now. And that's been like a huge shift because I, year after year, I have higher revenue, I'm making more commissions, but I'm working less and less as
Yeah.
goes by. And this is going to sound so cheesy, but I saw this quote the other day that was like, if you can take a break to have lunch with your spouse or take your kids to the park on a Monday afternoon, you're already a successful entrepreneur. And that's just what I'm feeling. Like, I feel like I'm so lucky and so blessed to have found this path and love it and be good at it after the work I put in. But it allows me still, like, I work from home with my kids, who thank God are not here right now, but I get to spend time with them and be the mom that does school pickup. And, so it's really afforded me the flexibility that that I was so looking for.
Oh, and so many people who I think that's the thing that I see a lot on the other side of like the industry, like doing more of the FITs. And when you get busier and when you get more successful and when you have more people traveling and you have more of that, like, I'm constantly on, I have to answer all these questions. I have to be, if there's a, whatever. And of course, like if somebody's like at their, incentive trip and there's something, if you're traveling with them, obviously you're there on site, but if you're not, you have to address something. But I'm sure it's just so different than like the constant questions of like, oh, what should we tip our drivers? How do we pack for Greece? All of that kind of stuff, which I'm 100% understanding you there. Also, before I forget, you do need an assistant, and we can definitely talk about this more offline, because I'm like, don't have an assistant. You are doing child documents yourself. I have no idea like what volume you're doing, but I also know this is just kind of my business hat going on. That's not what makes you money. And that's not what makes you successful. And so when you spend time doing the things that don't move the needle and don't make you more revenue, when somebody else could do it just as great as you, it obviously comes at a cost, but that cost is or that time that you spend, paying somebody else to do that busy work is also this time that you have then to kind of find another client or grow the business or go to the park. Sure. Right?
Yeah.
Whatever makes you happy.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
no, I know that is so true. And I probably am not alone in this either, that like, I know I'm just so type A and OCD that like, I'm having a hard time. Like, how do you trust someone? And I have tons of colleagues and advisor friends who have assistants, and they're like, you just work it out, and like, once you get over the hump, like it all works out and it's worth it. I know they're worth it. What I need to do, truthfully, I'm going to hire someone to start traveling with my groups, like a travel director or something that can be there. Because if I see the benefit of really being there on site with them, but I just can't.
There's going to be a limit to what you can actually do and leave your house and be away from your family and stuff. So that role is another one, definitely, that like, especially as you grow, I think would be really beneficial. And you're so right. This is the literal question that I probably have more than anything else is like, no, but like, how do I trust somebody? But what if they don't do exactly like I do? But like, I need to make sure. And all of that is true. And also, like, we give ourselves far too much credit for being the only one that can do the thing in our business the way we do it. We think we're so like special, and then we learn, oh yeah, I'm not that special. And in some ways you are. But I'm guessing that there's a lot of things you do on a day-to-day basis that is not based on your brilliance. And so your brilliance, that's the moneymaker, right? Like the thing that only you can do, the thing that sets you apart, the thing that like people want to be your client for. Yeah, stay tight-fisted with that stuff. But there's a lot of type A, Enneagram 1, great document checkers out there in the world.
Yeah. I think it's not even so much that I don't think anyone could do it like me. I am not an educator. Like I have a good friend, Kristen, who she is on her own now as well. She went independent about a year ago, and she has an assistant now. And she is so great at training her assistant and like making Loom videos for her. And she's creating this whole database for her to follow. And that's the kind of stuff where I'm just like, that is not my wheelhouse. So even if they could do it as good as me, and I'm fully aware that they can, I'm like, I don't even know how to teach you how to do any of this. This is why I don't know how I'm ever going to have ICs. Because I got a lot to learn before I do that. So
yes. We'll have another conversation about it. It's like one of my favorite topics. Yeah, I love it. Well, it's easy. It's easy for me to tell other people what to do and how they should do it. It's like one of my strengths, I think. But so do you find, because I think that you said you started your first client, he was, a client in the other realm, leisure, whatever. And he's like, hey, I have this business and this is what I would like to do. And I think that is super great to get your foot in the door that way. How and I think you mentioned this a little bit, it's kind of like, well, he told his friends who, whatever. Is that kind of the way you see it working from you, what you know? And this is just like your experience of it. But is there a way, like for people who are saying, this does sound interesting. I like this idea of like being in this realm, which is a kind of like a marrying of like event planner with a travel aspect to it.
Yeah.
But like you really are just like, I think people, what seems motivating to me is like literally you seeing like this event unfold like the way it was supposed to, with everything taken care of, with no stress of the leader, you know, who the person with the pocketbook and all that thing, like not having to worry about anything, trusting you, trusting that you're going to take care of everything. And I'm sure that there's advisors that are like, you know what, I think with my personality, I would maybe love that. But like, getting your foot in the door seems to be kind of like the hard part. If you maybe don't have a client that like is already a business owner who does incentive trips already, like, yay if you do, because that's amazing. You could just be like, you know what? Have you ever considered, do you have somebody that you already work with? Do you know of other good ways that maybe you tried or you've just heard of like a getting your foot in the door tactic to try? You know, do you cold call business owners and say like, hey, do you do incentive trips? Or is this something that like, this is really I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's like business owners who maybe don't do incentive trips. And so your role could be like, have you considered this type of incentive for your business? We could talk about what that might look like, or, you know, to a certain type of business that's making a certain level of revenue or profit or however it is. I'm not sure, because I don't know why people do incentive trips and other people don't, but anything you could kind of give us in terms of like foot in the door tactics.
Yes, that is hard for me to answer, to be honest with you, because this literally fell in my lap, you know, and I was so lucky and so blessed that happened, because it really transformed my career. But I would say now, like knowing what I do know now, and even back then, I wasn't cold calling people, but I was DMing companies on Instagram and saying, hey, it looks like that, you know, I see this is your sales company. A lot of the ones that I do are like solar companies or pest control, any door-to-door type of sales. I like them sometimes because they usually do like a sign-on bonus trip and then their top producer trip.
So interesting. So this is a very like sales business oriented type of thing, like this
for saying that I am not a salesperson. I'm definitely in a sales job for sure.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And you're just
even when we say we're not, no, you're selling.
I mean, if you're not selling, you're not making any money.
You don't got a business. It's a nice hobby that you'll like maybe do for people if they come randomly knocking on your door. But like,
exactly. But that doesn't happen very often. But that, you know, some people just never respond, and some people say, oh, this and that. And then I felt like once I did my first one, which I feel like even when you become a travel advisor, getting your first trip is always the hardest part, right?
Yeah. And then for it not to be your cousin, and then, you know, it keeps going and going, right? Like, where's my 6 degrees of separation? Because I need to get away from these people.
The actual proof of like, this is an incentive trip that I planned. Even after I started doing that, like people reached out to me on Instagram and were like, oh, my husband's company does a trip every year with so-and-so. Like, can you plan this one? And so people have come to me that way too. And then vice versa. I see people go on trips and I'm like, hey, did you know I'm an incentive travel planner? I'd love to plan this trip for you. And they're like, oh, well, we already work with so and XYZ company. And I'm like, okay, I will say that is something that if somebody feels like they really would have a passion for this and this is what they want to do by, you know, planning events, because again, it's not just you plan the trip and then you're hands off. You plan the trip and then it's way more hands on after that. And being involved in all the details, maybe look into an incentive house or a corporate travel company, because this is something that they do in and out. You could also reach out to me. I'm sure you'll get my information. I could tell you some of the companies that I do know, because that might be a better foot in the door where you're just starting out to be like, I don't know anything. Teach me what I need to know, you know?
And I love the idea of being able to just like, I mean, it works in all industries, but the idea that you can just like watch somebody do the thing that you might be interested in doing and being like, oh, am I actually really interested? And then how does this work? And like, let me pick your brain, but also be helpful while I'm doing it. You know, like
get hired with one of those companies and then see if it's really what you want to do and you enjoy doing it. And then that just because you work for them for X amount of time doesn't mean you have to stay. You know, you can eventually branch out. It's just like the same in the travel advisor world. You have a host, you learn what you need to know. And we're always learning. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm like, I left my host because they taught me everything I could possibly know.
Right.
But you get the information that you need, and then you find people who are better suited for you to learn even more, you know? So
Mhm.
I feel like if you don't know, you can't just book a trip off the fly, an incentive trip off the fly. Like maybe looking into an incentive house would be beneficial as a starting point because then you're
Mhm.
learning really everything right off the bat instead of
All the
because someone at
details.
that house would just be like, here's everything you need to know instead of like me, like slowly learning as I go, people that
Yeah.
I meet along the way.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's good. That's good. So I think what you said was number one, your niche, and I don't know if
mhm,
there's like a different, a lot of different ones, or maybe there's only a couple, is really like these companies that are sales focused, right? So they do
yeah,
the door to door sales or different types of sales, and they're
yeah,
already used to like this bonus or incentive structure of like giving trips to top producers or for coming on board or something like that.
yeah.
And is that an industry that like is a really good one to pay attention to if you are interested in this type of travel because this is already what they're going to be doing. That's the first question. Is
Yeah.
that kind of true?
Yes, I think
Okay.
that is definitely true.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, the second question is if they aren't already working with a travel agent or advisor
Yeah.
to do these trips, are they kind of trying to organize these on their own normally? Is this kind of like, damn, this is on my plate. I got to figure out a hotel. We're just going to go to the same hotel every year because I don't know what else to do. And I guess I'll
Yeah.
figure it out. And so is it kind of advantageous to be like, hey, are you doing this? And also, do you work with somebody? Because if you don't, I could make your life a whole lot easier. Is
Yeah.
that an approach that is like, okay,
1000%.
okay,
Because I will say too, I've had a handful of groups that either if I've approached them or they've come to me and they're like, well, like I've just had my assistant do it in the past. I'm like,
it's
but
always the assistant. Well, the
it's always
assistant
the
get
assistant who
hired for
doesn't know
that.
anything about
Right.
travel. So
She
I
just is
always ensure to
literally
say, like,
Googling
you hire me so that your assistant can do her actual
her
job.
actual job.
Like,
Yes,
which
yes.
and she's not qualified I mean, anyone I understand that she can go book it on Costco for all of you. I get that. But like it's a totally different experience. And the group I was just mentioning actually that I
Mhm.
traveled with in March, it was the first time I worked with them. The assistant had done it before and then I was there and I maybe that was it too. Like all the praise that I was given for like
Mm.
how better the trip was executed.
That's a boost. Yeah, that's a
Yeah, like, I was like but it also is good for them too because
to see
now
the
I know
difference.
they will
Yeah.
hire me every year instead of having the assistant do it.
Yeah, they're like, "We're never going back. Sorry,
Yes.
assistant, do your job, but, like, this is
I feel
actually
like
not good enough."
it always comes out in some way. Like, on the flip side, I have, she's a friend of mine, but she reached out to me and she was like, "My company wants me to plan this trip to Cancun. I don't know what I'm doing." And I'm like, "Well, okay, well, you can hire me." And she was like, "Well, they don't wanna pay somebody to do it." And I was like, "Okay, well, what do you want me I'm not just gonna book you know what I'm saying?
Well, okay.
So, I said, "I would love to reach
This is
out to
what I
them."
do. Yeah.
Yeah, let me contact them and I will tell them what I can do for them. So she gives me their email address. I email him my whole sales pitch
Mhm.
about everything I can do for them and never heard back. And she called me like a week later and she's like, "I'm really sorry. I know they didn't email you back, but he just thinks that like I can do it just fine. So I'm going to plan it for them." And meanwhile, she's never been out of the country. She doesn't even
Mm.
have a passport.
Oh,
And I was just like, I felt kind of sick to my stomach because I'm like, that sucks to A, lose the sale always, but
always, yeah.
B, to be like, how is this trip even going to work out? Like, best
No,
of luck
yeah.
to you, you know?
Yeah, like you already know. You
Yeah.
already know. I mean, yes, I think that we all know because like when people are like, never mind, I think we can do it ourselves. Look at my spreadsheet. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I
I
just am
know.
like, okay. You're
I
gonna get
have
there
learned,
and just realize all the things you didn't plan, all the
yes.
ways that things didn't get taken care of. And that's a bummer that you
Yeah.
didn't see the value
Yeah.
of
Yep.
like a true expert who knows what
Yeah.
they're doing, handling that for you. And also see, because yes, of course, like you're running a business. Like
Yeah.
I am very big also, and just like we have to enter business relationships. I'm not
Yeah.
doing you favors. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, yeah, I'm glad you're my friend who has never booked a trip with me anyway. And now you
also, yeah.
a company trip for free. So like, I don't know. But I do think that comes with years of experience too. Like when I was new, I didn't charge fees. And I
Mm.
remember the first time I ever charged someone a fee, it was $100. And I was like, oh my God, are they going to pay it?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's just like that comes with
Yes,
evolving and that's just where we are now. But
yes,
but anyway, I think the sales companies are huge because it usually they're being incentivized with a trip for selling X amount of whatever they're selling. So that's
right.
why I have focused on them. That is an interesting question because I've never thought much about it actually. Like
Mm.
what other incentive trip, like what are the companies that they're
Would do that, and Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like there's a couple of people who I feel like do something similar, but I don't even know like what industry, like I'm not sure,
Yeah.
friends that I
Yeah.
have that maybe like work with a group every year and kind of like are their person, but I'm not sure like what type of business it is. And
Yeah.
maybe, but I think at the end of the day, it probably always has something to do with like producing, right? Like
For
a
sure.
top producers, unless you're the type of company who just is like, just living it up and you take everybody who works for you on a trip every year. Like I might need to change
Yeah.
industries if that's
I
how you
think
roll.
I think too with the sales companies, like another benefit of them is like I said, sometimes they'll do a trip for like a signing bonus, and then
Mm,
sometimes they'll do their top producers trip, and then there's even the same company that will do their VIPs and
right.
um like the owners of the company. I think they call them VIP. Anyways, I'm sure it's
Yeah.
different for
Yeah.
each company. So it's like they are traveling multiple times a year.
Right.
They're obviously making bank. So
Yes.
also when if I tell a couple or like I'm like this is my planning fee and like I know that's a lot of money but is it worth it to you, versus when I tell a corporation who obviously I know they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, like you can afford to pay my fee. So
Exactly. It's
those
not even, it's a different level of kind of like, you either think this is valuable or you don't. It's not because you don't
yeah,
have whatever it is that you
right,
decided is a fair fee for what you do, because you do so much work and they should be wanting to pay for it. But like, it is totally different than I'm like, all right, I don't know. Did they budget for this in their honeymoon budget? Like,
right, yeah,
whatever it is, I'm going to charge them. But like, yes, a corporation or a business or what have you, a CEO, like,
yeah,
at
it's
the
a
end of
different
the
ball
day, that
game.
fee in the big scheme of things is chump change,
Yeah,
right?
for
Like
sure. Yeah.
they're spending so much money. Even the fact that they have the budget to go on an incentive trip,
Yeah.
you're good. We should be good.
Although I will say they are just as budget minded as
Mm,
FIT clients. Like,
mm.
never have I ever been like, here's what it's going to cost. And they're like, can you do something a little different? Like, I think that's why it's the long game too, because it's a lot of back and forth. And
Uh,
I think it is also harder than an FIT couple, let's say, to be like, we want to go on our honeymoon. We have a $10,000 budget.
yeah.
Whereas with corporations, I'm like, well, what's your budget? And they're like, I mean, I don't know. How much is it going to cost to take 200 people to Mexico?
Like they don't really have a frame of
Yes.
reference to start at of like,
Yeah.
what should this cost for what I'm
Yeah.
thinking we need? Like, I
Or
don't
then
know.
I'm like, "This is what it costs," and they're like, "Wait,
Whoa.
what?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "So are you going or are you not going?"
Are there
Like,
less high producers?
yes, exactly. Exactly, just take less people,
Right.
but it is interesting. It's very different, and I guess to go back to what you're asking, like, if you are interested in this field to get your foot in the door, I mean, if you're with a host, ask your host, like,
Mhm.
if they do incentive groups or like how they started and learned their incentive experience. Mine has come from a lot of relationships with certain, not even BDMs, but regional sales managers. So
Mm.
a certain property, like when I do FITN group, I sell a lot of Playa Resorts, Hyatt
Okay.
Ziva, Zilara. So I have my BDM that I use on the FIT side, but there's also a group sales regional
Yeah.
manager that
Yeah.
handles just the corporate, not the corporate, but just well, there's a corporate one, a MICE, meeting and incentive, and then the leisure sales. And so you work with whoever you need to for that one, but they introduce you to the hoteliers that you're looking to meet. And anyway, getting to know them and then being invited to that IMEX Americas conference, which I wish I could say more about that too, but that kind of fell in my lap. Like I was working
Mhm.
with this hotel and she's like, you should come to IMEX. And I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Right, right, right.
And so then from there, I just met so many different people. And now it's just like GTM, except for instead of having BDM relationships, now it's all meeting and incentive. So it's just
Okay.
a different, I mean, different, same industry, but different like sector
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
So I
That's
would say
interesting.
that, yeah, that's the most important. Because if you, or even contact your BDM and say, I'm interested in looking more into meeting incentive sales. Do you have a contact for your MICE
Mhm.
specialist in your,
Yeah, no, that's a good way to go, because yes, I
yeah,
know that there are different people and they like deal
yeah,
with the different aspects of, people coming to that property or whatnot, but they could even
yeah,
give you like, here's the lowdown, like here's
yeah,
the type of thing that you should expect if you get into something like this, which will just be just helpful and beneficial information.
yeah.
Um, that's really good. So, how do you find, like, when you're dealing with, a client who is the one client, like, what is that relationship like? Like, how much are you kind of like in relationship or discussing, or how much in the detail, it might matter, differ from person to person, like how much in the details are they? Are you just kind of like saying, here, sign off on this? Or is it like a collaboration of sorts?
I would say that depends on the client.
Okay.
I mean, probably just like with other ones too, but like there are some clients who, especially ones I've been working with for years now, they're like, we know we can trust you. Here you go, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other people who just want to be super involved in the process, and everyone signs a contract. That's a difference from FIT too. Like there's no group without a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back and forth with the contract negotiations, and like I mentioned, that one client who was like, "We'll get us more concessions." And so it just depends on how involved they want to be in. But I will say, all my clients are important, my FIT clients too.
Yeah.
But I probably nurture my group clients more because that's just where I'm trying to be at.
Yeah.
Like I want to keep those relationships really strong. Actually, you just reminded me. I think this one I was referred to by another. She started working for this company and they were like, well, you should hire Brittany. And they were like, why would we hire a travel advisor? Anyway, but I need to send her a thank you gift. That is
okay, yeah.
I forgot about it till right now. Anyway, I need to do that. But like that kind of stuff. Like I want her to know how much I appreciate her speaking my name in a room that no one existed.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, is so important to small businesses,
Oh,
especially.
1000%.
Yeah. And then, but just to really maintain I will say having boundaries is a little bit harder, and maybe that's only on me, but sometimes he wants to call me at 9:00 and I don't answer, but then I feel like I do have to I'm more available for them, especially in the beginning, like when we're going through contract negotiations and things. And then now that it's over and done with, the contract is signed, we'll probably they're traveling in January. So we won't talk as much from here to then until we're really planning things. But anyway, the long answer of that is I think it depends on the client, how much they want to be involved, but I really take it from them. Like I take their lead on that. And if they want to be involved, I'll involve them. If they want me to do it and then just give me a credit card number, that's even better. And we just go from there,
Yeah. But I think it's probably similar to the fact that like, if your client segment is whatever it is, you have to understand kind of like the nuance of that particular type client segment, how they like to communicate, even like the types of communication, what times, whatever, like a stay-at-home mom is going to be different than a C-suite executive. Like it just is. And, and if your business is set up to serve this type of person, you have to make sure that there's an alignment there of like what's going to work for them and also what's going to work for you.
That was the hardest to kind of navigate because exactly what you're saying, like, my clients, group clients, they're working when I'm working. And so they want to talk to me.
Successful businesses,
Yes.
So they can
take. So they want to talk to me after business hours when they're driving home or after they put their kids to bed, And so that has been hard to navigate. And it depends on the client. And of course, if they're traveling like 24/7, we're always going to be available for them. But like, I do feel like we've learned this early on too. Like you have to really educate your clients on those boundaries, and like your question about an excursion does not have to be answered at 9:00 on a Thursday.
Sure doesn't. Yep.
No, and corporate clients are the same way. If it's something that can't wait, then I won't make it wait. But if you're going to ask me a question,
a question that could be answered later.
Yes. And we can deal with that.
I love it. I am so much better now at setting those boundaries and kind of being like, are you kidding me? It is Saturday evening. I am this is so not important right now. I'm not even going to acknowledge, like I'm going to email you back on Monday morning is what I'm going to do because this is.
And we will schedule a time that we can go. That's one of the hard things too, is I feel like, especially going into this after COVID too, because I work from home. I work with I have a 2-year-old. Well, he was 2 at the time, a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old now. And like, I can't get through a phone call without them being
absolutely not. Yeah.
But COVID, that was one thing that I feel like COVID taught a lot of those successful male CEOs because they had to work from home too. And I'm like, this is just life. Yeah. And this is what we do. And you have hired me to do this service and I'm going to do it. But that doesn't mean that it's all on your terms.
Yeah.
And my kids are going to be here and I'm not going to answer your phone late at night and phone call late at night. But also, you hired me. You need me for this. Yes, so why do I have to treat you like you are, I don't know. That probably sounded very egotistical.
No. We get it.
I'm just saying, like they can be very demanding, much more demanding than an FIT client because they think that they're
everything revolves around them.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
100%. And so, yeah, it is that like finding the balance of like respecting them and their position and like what they do and their business. And
Yeah.
also like, you are not the 24/7 on call
Yeah.
concierge personal assistant
Yeah.
slash, because if you let a lot of people treat you that way, they will absolutely do it. And then you
Forever.
are the
Yeah.
one like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, how did I get here? I'm like, you let them like that's how
We've
it
all
is.
learned that lesson at some point, I
Yeah.
think. I definitely have been there before, which is why I know I don't want to do it again. And if
Uh-huh.
you give one little inch in the very beginning, it's
Then
over.
they're like, oh, yep, I
Yeah.
got it. I'm in. I'm
Yeah.
in.
Even though they have a lot of money and are
Yeah.
spending a lot of money, that doesn't mean you owe them all of your
Right.
time.
Right.
I think it's
100%.
important too.
Okay, so the last thing I'm really curious about, because I think this is like the thing that you found, even like this next level of diving into this career, and that's kind of like the traveling with the groups
Yeah.
and the shift that has both on your business and also the group. So give me an idea of kind of like the impact that you're seeing of like, hey, here's how I can make myself even more valuable, or here's how I'm bringing more to the table when I'm able to do this part or offer this part of a service
Yeah.
to incentive travel.
I think a way to think about that is, I mean, just think of your FIT clients. When you have a hotel booked, let's say it's somewhere in Europe, and you just expect everything to go well. You think
Mhm.
the reservation's going to be in the system exactly as it should be. They're going to get the room that we booked for them. And we all know it doesn't always
Right.
go to plan that way. And that's how it was for me with this group. I decided to travel with them 2 weeks before they left. Like there was just something telling
Oh.
me like you should
Mhm.
just go. They didn't pay for me to go because it wasn't in our contract, so I
Mhm.
paid my own way to go. The resort did comp me the night, so that was nice. But I got there the day before everybody else arrived. I met with the meeting planner on site, so I had a personal relationship with her. I walked through every single space of the resort that they were going to be using for meetings and events and made sure everything was set up. And it was just like, again, my type A personality, I just
Mm.
felt more at ease. Like I was like,
Mm.
if I was at home right now, I would just be like, I'm hoping everything's
Mhm.
going well, And then being there and getting to greet everybody and having that personal connection of meeting me. And I mean, even just like little things, tiny little things, like walking them over to where the meeting was going to be and saying,
Mm.
your dinner is over in this hall this night, whatever. And then the first morning, I was like, did you sleep well? And someone was like, I didn't sleep very well because our smoke detector went off. Like it kept beeping. And I was like, well, did they come and fix it? And she's like, well, who was I supposed to call? And I was like,
Oh, you
I
just like
don't know.
she just the whole night just that's the most annoying thing in life, number one. Oh my gosh.
So I was like, but the fact that I said, oh, well, I'll go take care of that for you.
Right.
Like she was just like, oh my God, like just like little things. But
Yeah.
also, we had, I think it was only 40 rooms. And I went through every reservation the day of check in, and there was like 5 or 6 that were in the wrong room categories.
Oh,
So to be able to go through
yeah.
and fix that beforehand and say, no, this needs, so everything was perfect when they arrived.
Yeah.
That just made me feel more at ease about
And
everything.
it's
And
honestly, it's like the things, most of those things are things they would have never even noticed that you did,
no,
right? Like nobody's knowing that you fixed the room type. It's just
yes,
fixed. But
yeah,
it's the overall satisfaction of like their experience was seamless. And there
yeah,
wasn't like those tensions or, like friction points that could
yeah,
have been there, which
yeah,
is fine, like overall. But like that's just another level of service I think that you're
yeah,
able to provide and really
yeah.
could set you apart also, I think.
For the whole group and especially the group leader, because
Yeah.
all of those things would have fallen on her at that point,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she was very grateful to have me there. And it was just like, little things, but it ended up creating that seamless experience like you were saying, and that is what they're really looking for and what I want to provide as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, now I have to travel with 250 people, and that's
Woo.
a lot more. So
That's
but
a
I'm going
lot
to hire
more.
someone to bring with me, don't you worry.
Okay, okay, good, good, good. Are you extrovert by chance? I'm just wondering.
I'm kind of a little bit of both. Like
Okay.
I think because I work from home, that by myself, I'm like independent, it's like I don't have this camaraderie a lot, and sometimes I really miss that.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying this conversation so much, and it's great to like talk about the industry and even my experience. But like after this, I probably won't speak for like 2 hours because I
Oh,
just like
I'm so the same. I'm like, I love it and I'm in it. And then I'm done and I'm like,
yes, it's like all of it. I feel like I'm running on adrenaline, and I'm just like it'll all leave my
yes,
body, and
yes.
I'll be so
So
tired.
that no, I was curious because when you were explaining like being on site and like 250 people, and in my mind I'm running through like how I would be, just like
Yeah.
I would be in it and I would be like on and I would be charming and I would be,
Yep.
fixing
Yep.
things and having conversations and doing the thing.
Yep.
And then when I like closed my door or when I flew home, I'd be like, silent
Nope.
retreat. I am
That
done.
that was exactly it. I went the night they all arrived, they had the dinner, and I made sure everything was fine. I did not stay at the dinner. I went and got a glass of wine and went back to my room. It was like 8:30.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have one sip of that wine before I just fell asleep. Yeah, I'm definitely that
Yeah.
way. So
Yeah.
it's so fun to be on, when we need to. But I also know at this point in my life, I can't do that all the time. So
Yeah.
you just make it work how
Yeah.
you can.
No,
So,
that's that. I was just curious about that because I was like, I wonder
yeah.
if, because that's how I like run through situations and
Yeah.
scenarios. But there's some people who like can do that all day, every
All the
day.
time.
And
Yeah.
they're just like, what's next? Where's the next cocktail hour? And I'm like,
Mhm.
dear God. Like, like when I go to conferences, I'm like, wait, y'all are hanging out after we did a whole day of meetings. You're going to go
All
meet each other
day?
at the bar and talk
Yeah.
some more to the same people? No,
Yeah. I'll catch you
absolutely not.
tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Brittany, listen, like I said, I found this fascinating. I also found it super interesting and insightful because, like I said, there are so many ways that we can be successful in this industry. And a lot of times we start for various reasons and we get
Yeah.
into it because we want, a lot of us, freedom, flexibility, like designing our life on our own terms. And
Yeah.
we use this industry as a vehicle to make that happen. And the
Yep.
beauty of it is that it can look very, very different for a lot of, and they could all be successful, right? You can go
Yeah.
down this path, you go down this path, you can go down this path. I love this kind of like path that you shed a little bit more light to, because it's, number one, different than Whitney and I and our business models, but it's
Yeah.
a really it's one that people can consider. And a lot of times, like, it's not as known kind of like what it looks like. What do you actually do? How do you, who do you have to deal with? Like all those questions that you answered for us today. So
Yeah.
thank you for just, like I said, it is really just like being willing to be an open book, because I think we can all learn from each other when we're willing to just be like,
For
here's
sure.
what I do. I don't know, take from it what you will, and hope it
Which
helps a little bit.
I think is one of the greatest things about this industry as a whole, because most people are like that. And if the people who are like trying to gatekeep all their secrets, like, we don't want to be involved with them anyway.
Oh,
So
thanks.
like, let's have community over competition and like build each other up. I'm definitely all about that. I will say thank you for having me. And I'm glad that you found it educational and informative as well, because if I can do this, anybody can do it. You know what I mean? Like this, I did not get into this thinking like, this is really what I want to do. I just got a little taste of it and was like, how do I actually make this work?
Right.
And if you have a mindset that you want to make it work and you're going to make it work and you work to make it work, then it's going to happen. There's no reason that anybody in this industry could not do incentive travel.
Yeah.
So,
I can't even remember who said it. I heard this years ago, but it's this idea that everything is figure outable. And so there's so many things that like we don't know at the beginning of doing it or trying it or thinking if we want to do it, that we don't know actually how to do it. But that's irrelevant almost. It's really like, hey, figure it out.
Yeah.
It's figure outable because there's other people doing it. And that's like my perspective on pretty much all things ever, is like, if somebody else is doing it, I know I can. So I just got to figure it out.
Started somewhere.
Everybody all started somewhere.
Yeah.
So, and like 99.9% of us didn't even go to school for anything related to what we're doing now. I couldn't even tell you how my degree plays into my life. It doesn't at all.
Mine either. Yep. I'm like, that was it a waste or
I loved college, but I don't know that it helps me run a business
now, for sure. Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for sharing your brilliance and just being willing to have this conversation with me and make it fun and informative. And I really hope that people took something from it and learned something they didn't know, because I sure did. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You made this fun and easy. So I appreciate it.
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.